Hello, and welcome to the Asphalt Group's new Employee Safety Training, or NEST for short.
In case of emergency, familiarize yourself with the exits. Be sure to ask if you're not sure. Please set your cell phone to vibrate and do not use it while watching this training video. Be sure to sign the orientation training checklist form after the class is complete. This is initialed by you in each box to verify your training. Breaks can occur as needed. Make sure you know the location of the bathroom ahead of time and simply pause the training video until you return.
Asphalt Group Incorporated. Asphalt Group Incorporated is a highway and bridge construction company that specializes in complex major infrastructure projects in South Florida since 2016. The company credits its accomplishments to the many dedicated, talented, and hard-working employees that have made the company what it is today. The underlying philosophy being that a company is only as good as the people it employs, and to that end, the company considers every employee an important part of its success. Throughout its 17-year history, the company continues to grow, and it takes great pride in the fact that it has never been forced to lay off a single employee for lack of work. The purpose of today's class is to expand your knowledge about the Asphalt Group's safety program and your role in it. Review what you've learned about safety on the job so far, if today is not your first day. Answer any questions you may have regarding our safety program here at the Asphalt Group. Today's goal? To provide the training and insight to ensure that all employees who arrive for work will depart for their homes the same way that they arrived.
Why are we really here? Because this is something we never want to happen to our employees. The Asphalt Group safety philosophy is simple. The health and safety of our employees, those who work with us, and the communities in which we work are of primary importance to the Asphalt Group. No aspect of our work warrants greater attention. Safety must never be sacrificed for the sake of production. Next, we're going to talk about employees' responsibilities. At a minimum, all employees at every level of the organization are accountable for the following: assuming responsibility for their own safety and the safety of those with whom they work, adhering to established company safety policy and procedures, adequately planning safety into every work task, actively participating in the safety process, and immediately correcting or reporting all hazards. More of your safety responsibilities. Number one, who is most responsible for your safety? You are. And how do you achieve this? By knowing and following all of the safety rules, wearing the proper PPE required for a task, being prepared to come to work each day, both mentally and physically. Who else are you responsible for? Can you come up with any other reasons? You are also responsible for your coworkers' safety. Stop unsafe acts while they are happening. Don't wait. If you see something, say something. Remind people to comply with safety rules. Be another set of eyes and ears to help prevent an accident. You must report any injury or illness, no matter how minor, immediately to your supervisor. Your report will also help us to identify and correct hazards that will prevent injuries to others in the future as well. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is designed to protect you from hazards. It only protects you if you wear it. It must be inspected daily before each use, and it must be maintained properly. Replace defective PPE immediately. Turn in that defective PPE to your supervisor for a replacement. Every PPE item has a limit to its effectiveness. Hard hats must be worn properly. The Asphalt Group logo should face the front. The inner suspension should be in place. The ratchet should work perfectly. No hats should be worn underneath, and do not paint or draw on the outer shell. Inspect your hard hat daily. Check it for cracks or defects. Make sure the suspension functions correctly. If it needs to be replaced, talk to your supervisor.
Vests are required on all projects and job sites. Class 2 retroreflective clothing is required by all project employees and subcontractors. Class 2 shirts are also acceptable. A Class 3 vest is required for all personnel performing nighttime operations such as asphalt paving and MOT when working near traffic. Inspect daily. Replace if worn out or if too dirty to be visible. Exchange your worn vest for a new one. This policy includes contractors that are working on the job sites as well.
Footwear. Leather or work-type footwear is required at all times. Safety toes are recommended, but not required. Specialty footwear for tasks might be rubber boots, for example, in a wet environment. No sneakers or Docker-style shoes are allowed by our employees or by subcontractors. Only leather or work-type footwear should be used at any time while on the project. Eye protection. Your safety glasses must meet ANSI Z87.1 standards. That standard is for impact protection. These glasses provide protection against flying objects, light radiation, and dust. Face shields are required for all grinding, welding, machining, cutting, chipping, and spray operations or any other specific activity where there is an increased risk for eye and/or face injury. You may also need a shade 4 or shade 5 cutting glasses or goggles when cutting with an acetylene torch rig. Eye protection. Your eye protection should be inspected before each use. Always clean with a clean cloth to avoid scratches. Replace any damaged or defective glasses. If you wear prescription glasses, impact-resistant lenses with side shields should be worn while on the job. Or you could ask your supervisor about safety glasses that are designed to safely cover those prescription glasses. All employees, including subcontractors on the job, must adhere to the policy. Hand protection. Your hands are your most valuable asset. It is of the utmost importance to protect that asset on the job. Basic leather-palmed work gloves or rubber-palmed gloves will be provided to every employee when hired. Employees will be provided additional protective gloves based on the identified hazards as needed. Those gloves would be the type like anti-vibration while chipping, cut-resistant while using knives, chemical-resistant while using chemicals, or welding when welding or cutting with an oxyacetylene torch. What is OSHA's silica rule for construction? 1926.1153A talks about construction requiring employers to limit worker exposures to respirable crystalline silica and to take other steps to protect workers. It helps to restrict housekeeping practices that expose workers to silica where feasible alternatives are available, such as blowing off dust with compressed air. What is silica? Silica is one of the most common minerals in the Earth's crust. Glass, beach sand, silicone, and granite are all silica materials. There are two forms of silica, crystalline and non-crystalline. Crystalline silica is a bigger worry for the health of our lungs. When we talk about silica exposure, we are talking about crystalline silica or quartz. Construction workers could be exposed to silica when cutting, grinding, drilling, sanding, mixing, or demolishing materials containing silica. The size of the airborne particles determines the amount of the risk. Smaller particles can be inhaled deep into the lungs where they can cause damage. Larger particles such as beach sand are not as great a concern because they are too large to inhale. What happens if you are exposed to too much silica? Breathing silica deep into the lungs can cause silicosis. With silicosis, silica particles lodge in the lung tissue, causing scarring. The lungs become less flexible, making it difficult to breathe and do work hard. Once silica develops, the damage is permanent and there is no recovery. How do we control exposure? Overall, this OSHA rule calls for employers to reduce employee exposure to silica and dictates the procedures employers should follow, such as engineering controls, using dust suppression, water truck use on the roadways, using water while cutting asphalt or concrete, administrative controls, which is training in silica and training in the exposure levels. Respirators are only used as a last resort. They should never be used instead of dust control. Voluntary usage is an option for nuisance dust as well, and it requires no medical training or fit testing. Examples of tasks that would require respiratory protection measures would be cutting asphalt or concrete with a handheld or walk-behind saw, operating a broom or broom tractor without a cab, sandblasting operations, baghouse and drum maintenance in asphalt plants would be another one. Remember, water suppression is key. Company policy requires utilizing water to keep the dust levels to a minimum, therefore not requiring a respirator. Remember, no dust equals no need for a respirator. This one slide says it all. Hearing protection. Always use earplugs or earmuffs when working around noisy equipment or tools in the field. Insert them properly. Keep them clean. Never insert earplugs into your ears with dirty fingers. Use caution when wearing hearing protection around traffic or equipment because you want to be able to hear the things around you. And always replace dirty or worn hearing protection. Let's look at some examples of tasks that require hearing protection. All tracked machines, unless it has an enclosed cab. Vibratory rollers, pans, scrapers, milling machines. Pile hammers, where we require the use of dual hearing protection, meaning that you need both earplugs and ear muffs. Cutoff saws, jackhammers, chainsaws, compactors, hole rams, otherwise known as the breaker attachments, 3/4 inch air wrenches or torque wrenches that are used sometimes on steel bridges. All of these things require hearing protection. Some other miscellaneous PPE or personal protective equipment would be chainsaw chaps whenever using a chainsaw, which, if you didn't know, are designed to bind up the chainsaw in the event that the chainsaw blade made contact with the chainsaw chaps. Toe caps, if the visitors were to be exposed to any toe hazards while on the job site, for example. Welding sleeves when welding, or the green welding shirt. Make sure you use the PPE properly and inspect it before each use. How are your PPE requirements communicated to you every day? By the daily job plan or the safety meeting that you have with your crew every morning. Do's and don'ts of operating hand and power tools. Do inspect tools and equipment before each use. Check extension cords for any cuts, broken ground prongs, or exposed wires. Keep tools clean and stored properly. Always use the right tool for the job. Wear the correct PPE for the tool as required per policy. Don't ever use defective tools or equipment. Don't leave power cords lying in water. Don't set circular saw blades down on their own power cords. You'd be surprised how many others have done this in the past. Don't operate tools or equipment unless you are experienced or have been trained in their use. Addressing safety concerns. If you feel a task or procedure is unsafe, the first thing you need to do is speak to your supervisor. If the issue is not resolved, bring the issue to the superintendent. If the issue remains unresolved still, contact your project manager immediately. If no action occurs, contact safety. You got to speak up for safety. Remember, if you see something, you must say something. Near misses. What is a near miss? It's an unplanned event that did not result in an injury, illness, or damage, but had the potential to do so. Only a fortunate break in the chain of events prevented an injury, fatality, or damage. A faulty process or management system is typically the root cause for the increased risk that leads to the near miss and should be the focus of improvement. Other familiar terms for these events: close call, narrow escape, near collision, near hit. Remember, report all near misses to your supervisor every day. What you see, what almost happened, could prevent someone from getting hurt in the future. Cell phones and texting. Use of a cellular telephone during working hours is prohibited. Texting is also prohibited. Injuries in the workplace. Some of the top 5 injured body parts are knees, hands, back, shoulders, head. Back injuries coming in number 1. Some of the top 5 events for causing injuries or illness is contact with objects, slips, trips, and falls, lifting, exposure to harmful substances, and transportation. Top 5 sources of injuries or illness: parts and materials, motion of position, floors, walkways, materials, hand tools, and machinery.
Most common injuries. Handling materials is the #1 injury-causing activity at Asphalt Group. Things like cuts, sprains, strains, burns, abrasions, etc. Preventing injuries when handling materials means following all safe procedures. These procedures should be discussed daily during the daily job plan meeting.
Handling materials. Number 1, get help. Use mechanical equipment. That's always the best way. If you do have to lift, use proper lifting techniques. Use your legs. Keep your back straight, head up. Keep the weight between your shoulders. Never lift more than 50 to 75 pounds by yourself. Remember, the weight limitation depends on your job description, and if you're unsure, simply ask your supervisor. Equipment handling safety. The physical work area must be safe first and foremost. Keep it clear, marked, and unobstructed work area. Workers must be trained, evaluated, and licensed. Training must be equipment specific and site specific. For example, forklift. The operator must be licensed to operate that forklift or telehandler. The equipment must be safe to operate. Inspect the equipment thoroughly before each use. Removal from service when repairs are needed. Never operate defective or unsafe equipment. The foreman should always contact the equipment shop to verify repair schedule whenever anything is found to be a safety hazard. How about these for proper lifting techniques? Do you see anything wrong in any of these pictures? Let's try to make sure we're not on the next list. Slips, trips, and falls. They are the #2 cause of injuries within our group. These injuries are prevented simply by good housekeeping. Believe me, good housekeeping on any project is the leading indicator of a safe project. Always keep the walkways clear, place extension cords, wood, ladders, anything that could potentially be a slip, trip, or fall hazard, just keep it out of the way. Backing accidents. Backing accidents are very preventable, both in the vehicle and on the ground. The best way to work around that is parking for first move forward. If the first motion you move is forward, then you're less likely to ever worry about someone being behind you. Back into parking spaces to make it easier and safer when you leave. Pull through parking spaces whenever possible. Pull through to make your first move forward. Stay clear of any backing equipment or vehicles if not needed whenever possible. Use a spotter. If you have more than one occupant in the vehicle, you have a spotter available to you. Or if you're going to have to back up more than 100 feet in an enclosed area, get a spotter. Here are some examples of what we just talked about in the previous slide. Let's talk about spotter training. The position of the spotter is the first thing. If you're exposed to traffic, the spotter should be placed on the passenger side of the vehicle or equipment. No traffic and no other crush hazards, the spotter can be placed on the driver's side. Never stand behind a piece of equipment or vehicle in a crush zone or next to a raised bed of a dump truck. Always leave yourself an out to ensure a clear path to a safe zone. Communication and signaling is always #1. Ensure you and the person you are spotting agree to the signals prior to spotting and moving backwards. Make sure the driver and operator know if they lose sight of each other, they are to stop immediately. One thing you're always going to find on a construction project are workers on foot. Believe me, this is an unforgiving environment for workers on foot. Working safely around equipment includes staying out of the EOZ or equipment operating zone unless your job demands it. If you do have to, approach the equipment from the operator's side, make two-way eye contact with the machine operator. Before you ever approach any piece of equipment, always get the right to enter the equipment operating zone. Stay out of any crush zones and swing radiuses, as those are the worst and will have the most potential for an injury. Workers on foot have a lot of struck-by type traffic hazards. During any mainline operations, pay close attention to your proximity to live traffic. Never leave your back to live traffic. Never allow tools such as shovels, asphalt rakes to extend beyond the closed lane and venture into live traffic, especially beyond the cones or barrels. Always watch out for your fellow workers and alert them if they get too close. Here are some examples of spotter signals. Things such as back up, turn right, back up, turn left, back up, slow down, stop, move forward, and you have this much distance left to back. As we've said before, always keep out of the swing radius at all times. Remember, excavators, cranes, aerial lifts, anything that has the ability for rotation, has the ability for something to rotate and hit someone else. Always stay out of that swing radius at all times, and always make sure you get clearance to enter from the operator before you enter. Fall protection. The leading cause of death in the construction industry is from falls from height. OSHA has a falls emphasis program because of this. For unprotected elevations above 6 feet, we could use 1. Fall arrest system. This protects the worker who is already in the process of falling by stopping the fall after it has happened. This is by using a body harness, a dual leg 6-foot lanyard for 100% tie off. A horizontal cable lifeline system could be used, or a retractable lanyard, otherwise known as a yo-yo. You could also use number 2, fall restraint system. Protects the worker from accessing the potential hazard. Things such as guardrails and handrails are good for this. Then you have warning lines. These warning lines let the worker know they are too close to the edge and must not proceed further. Do not ever expose yourself to the potential of a fall over 6 feet. As you can see in these two photos, the leading cause of falls in the home is from a ladder. Always make sure when you're working at home, be as safe at home as you are at work.
You good?
Lockout tagout. The purpose of lockout tagout is to prevent accidental or inadvertent equipment startup or energy release while performing maintenance, which could result in injury or death. Each asphalt plant, for example, must have an energy control plan or a lockout tagout manual. It's important to lock out the correct piece of equipment, and to do so, you need a lockout manual that tells you exactly which pieces of equipment to lock out and how many locks you'll need to make sure that you're safe performing the maintenance that you need to perform. You must be trained before working on equipment that requires lockout tagout. Vehicles and equipment also utilize lockout tagout. On a piece of equipment or a vehicle, you simply take the do not operate tag, write the purpose for the lockout tagout, sign it and attach it to the steering wheel or the area where the vehicle would normally be started. Electrical components and equipment also have specialty designed lockout tagouts for each type, such as breakers and control panels. Confined spaces. The OSHA definition of a confined space contains 3 main parts. Number 1, it has to be large enough for a worker to enter. It has to have limited or restricted means for entry or exit. And 3, it should not be designed for continuous occupancy. Confined spaces can be considered a permit required confined space if they have all of the 3 above parts plus 1 or more of the following. such as a potential hazardous atmosphere, the potential for engulfment or suffocation, a layout that might trap a worker through converging walls or a slope 4, or any other serious safety or health concern. In this slide, you're going to see examples of confined spaces at the asphalt plant. Things such as the asphalt storage silos, AC tanks, hoppers, bins, the drum, and of course the baghouse area. Hazards in a confined space would be things like a hazardous atmosphere, where you have a less than 19.5% oxygen deficient environment, or harmful contaminants, flammable substances, hot substances like asphalt, tack, or prime in the asphalt plant, engulfment hazards like you'd find in hoppers or silos, or any physical hazards like head knockers, etc. Anything that could strike you in the head while you're working. Confined space entry is by permit only. All participants must be properly trained. That means the entry supervisor, the confined space attendant, and all entrants must be properly trained and must review the permit prior to entry. Stay out of confined spaces until you're properly trained and a permit is issued and signed by all participants. After what we've just talked about, does this look like a permit required confined space? It certainly is. Excavation awareness. Any excavation requires a competent person. That person is generally the foreman. Their job is to determine whether the safety equipment needed is there, such as a trench box, shoring. They have to evaluate the soil conditions to determine the appropriate slope of the excavation. For example, in Florida, we have type C soil. All excavations in Florida must be made to 1.5 to 1 or 34 degrees. Their job is to check for proper ingress and egress to the excavation, inspect the excavation daily, supervise the operation, and to verify that any underground locates are done and checked to confirm that we know what's below before we dig. Some other excavation hazards would be surface hazards like roads, buildings, poles. Again, with access and egress or entrance and exit to it. Vehicle traffic barricades, any falling loads, mobile equipment working in the area that could collapse the sides of the excavation, any hazardous atmospheres inside the excavation, like a lack of oxygen, water accumulation in the excavation, severing of underground utilities while digging the excavation, and loose rock or soil, any falls into the excavation which could be prevented by handrails, and any cave-ins while digging or in the excavation. Soil classifications, protective systems, and sloping. Employees who work in excavations must be trained in the 4 soil classifications: stable rock, type A, type B, and type C soil. In general, stable rock is not common because we disturb it by excavating, leaving us with the following 3 soil types, A, B, and C, to gauge our excavations. Type C soil is the least stable type of all soils, and that's the soil that we find generally in Florida. Type C includes granular soils in which particles don't stick together, and cohesive soils with a low, unconfined compressive strength. All that just means that the soil does not stick together very well because it's mainly comprised of sand. Sloping for type C soil is 1.5 to 1 or 34 degrees. This means that the slope must be cut back 1.5 feet horizontally for every 1 foot of depth. Shielding for type C soil typically consists of a trench box protected on 2 sides and can be used in conjunction with steel plates on either end if the ends cannot be sloped back. But remember, those trench boxes must have 18 inches of reveal outside of the excavation to prevent material from falling inside. Spoils, access, and egress. Do not place spoils or excavated material within 2 feet from the edge of the excavation. You must provide ladders, ramps, or stairs for excavations 4 feet in depth or more. Areas of access egress must be within 25 feet of the workers inside the excavation. A trench box must never exceed a maximum of 24 inches off the bottom of the excavation. And remember, the trench box is required for an excavation more than 5 feet in depth. Here you can see some examples of good excavation safety and bad excavation safety. How many things can you find wrong in this photo? Do you see anything as unsafe? Have a look at these excavations. Do they look unsafe? The daily job plan. The daily job plan is how your supervisor communicates your job assignments. Any hazards to look for during the task, any PPE required, and the safe work procedures for each step of the task in order to stay safe. Use the daily job plan as a reference for what you have discussed. For it to be effective, you must participate in your daily job plan. You must sign the daily job plan every day. And never sign a blank form, just like you would never sign away a blank check. Driving company vehicles. All drivers must be approved by the main office prior to operating a company vehicle, including using a personal vehicle for company business. We must ensure that you have the proper license and endorsements for the vehicle you are planning to drive. Motor Vehicle Class E, for example, Commercial Driver's License CDL-A, CDL-B, plus any required endorsements, tanker, hazardous materials, etc., all need to be checked along with your driving record before you're approved for driving. Driver's responsibilities are: have a valid driver's license, maintain the vehicle. Utilizing a company-supplied vehicle is a privilege, not a right. Make sure the required paperwork is in the vehicle at all times. Keep it clean and trash-free. Report any accident or damage immediately to your immediate supervisor and to the safety department. Try to park first move forward and out of the way. Parking first move forward allows you to pull out rather than back out. Wear your seat belts. It's mandatory. It's Florida law and company policy. Company policy says all passengers, front and rear, must wear seat belts at all times. Follow all state laws, and you are responsible for any citations that you receive while driving a company vehicle.
Riding in the bed of trucks. Riding in the bed of a pickup is not a recommended practice and should be avoided at all times. If personnel are transported within the job site, they should remain completely seated on the bed of the truck, not on the bedsides, tailgate, or toolbox.
Equipment-related accidents. Some safe behaviors for getting on and off of equipment would be: number 1, face the machine at all times. Always use 3 points of contact, 2 feet in one hand or 2 hands in 1 foot. When operating heavy equipment, always inspect your equipment daily. Wear your seatbelt under the ROPS or rollover protection system. Not only is it company policy, but it is federal law to wear your seatbelt. Always turn your head before backing. And as we spoke of before, use a spotter when backing if you're unsure what's behind you or it's very restricted vision to the rear. Operating mobile equipment. Operators must inspect their equipment daily. This is mandatory and critical to checking for defects. Both the Des Moines Group and OSHA have these policies. Do not operate unsafe equipment. Report any safety defects on the equipment to your supervisor. Do not operate a piece of equipment that has any safety defects. Supervisors will contact the maintenance department, but only if you let them know. Know the emergency procedures for your equipment if you ever come in contact with utility lines, rollover, there's a fire, etc. When operating mobile equipment, there should never be riders unless they are in an approved seat. Again, mount and dismount properly. Always use 3 points of contact. And always exercise caution near overhead power lines. Heed the warning signs. The minimum clearance is 20 feet working. And never work over overhead power lines.
Crane hand signals. Never signal a crane unless you have been properly trained in the use of crane hand signals. OSHA requires a crane signal person to be adequately trained in the use of hand signals. No training means no signaling.
Yeah. Thanks for this, Gary.
Portable fire extinguishers. The types of fire extinguishers are as follows. Type A for general combustibles, Type B for flammable liquids, Type C for electrical fires, and Type D for metal fires. Always make sure the proper fire extinguisher is available for the fire potential that you have. Most are ABC type, which is good for all three. The easy way to remember is a Type A fire extinguisher is used for anything that burns to an ash. A Type B is used for anything that can boil, and a Type C is used for anything that conducts current. When using a fire extinguisher, always remember the acronym PASS, P-A-S-S. P, pull the pin. A, aim for the base of the flames. S, squeeze the trigger. And S, sweep from side to side. But be warned, fire extinguishers are only for small incipient stage fires. Be prepared to evacuate and call 911 if the fire extinguisher cannot control the fire. Remember to always check your extinguishers. Usually safety seals or tamper indicators are made of very light wire or plastic. Not this heavy-duty zip tie that you see here in the picture on the right. There's nothing like having to run around looking for a knife when the smoke and flames start rising. Always check to make sure that it's ready, charged, inspected, and ready to fight fires if necessary. Now we need to talk a little bit about the Global Harmonization Standard, GHS, and safety data sheets, formerly known as material safety data sheets. This is all found in the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard 29 CFR 1910-1200. OSHA replaced HAZCOM material data sheets with SDS. Every employee now has a right to know about every chemical product that they work with prior to ever working with it. So what exactly is an SDS? It's a safety data sheet. It lists the PPE required, the hazards it has, exposure limits, storage, health risks, and any other information about a chemical. Where can you find the SDS books? SDS books are typically located at a job site, but all SDS for anything is available online and within seconds by using a portable phone or a computer. When should you look for an SDS? Well, prior to working with any unfamiliar chemical or something that you don't know whether you could be allergic to it or not, you use it to ensure proper PPE is worn and handling instructions are followed. What terms should you be familiar with? Warning versus danger are signal words used to determine the level of hazard, with danger being more severe. What do I need to do if handling a chemical? The first thing is refer to the SDS for the hazards, PPE, storage, and first aid treatment prior to handling. Then ensure the container is labeled with the name of the chemical as well as the hazards. You can see the GHS label elements in the picture to the right. Notify your supervisor if you're unsure of handling instructions or the need for additional PPE. Here you will see an example of a non-compliant container and an approved container. According to the OSHA standard 29 CFR 1926.152A1, only approved containers and portable tanks shall be used for storage and handling of flammable and combustible liquids. Approved safety cans or DOT approved containers shall be used for the handling and use of flammable liquids in quantities of 5 gallons or less. So what's a safety can? It just means an approved closed container of not more than 5 gallons, having a flash arresting screen, spring closing lid, and spout cover, and so designed that it will safely relieve internal pressure when subjected to fire exposure. If you have any more questions about GHS, OSHA has a web page, or you can contact your supervisor or the safety manager for any additional information required. Some of the things to worry about in the hot Florida sun is sunburn, heat rash and cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stress. These are all things that we need to talk about every morning in our daily job plan. Wearing an SPF 30 or higher sun protection and limiting our sun exposure by wearing long sleeves, neck protection, face protection, those are all some of the preventive things we can do on a daily basis. But the most important thing we can do is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Drink lots of water and stay away from carbonated beverages. The worst heat-related illness is heat stroke. Some of the early symptoms is a high body temperature, hot, red, or flushed dry skin, headache, dizziness, confusion. Some of the advanced symptoms, seizure, convulsions, loss of consciousness, no detectable pulse. Some of the treatments would be lower the victim's body temperature and do not give liquids to an unconscious victim, and do not force them to drink too many liquids too quickly. Some tips for controlling heat stress: allow your body to become acclimatized, especially if you're coming from the north and coming down to work during the summer months. Always make sure you work, rest, make sure you avoid overexertion as much as possible. Drink 5 to 7 ounces of cool water every 15 minutes. Consume a light, cool lunch instead of hot, heavy meals. These are all some of the tips to prevent heat stroke. Water keeps your energy up, Weight down, muscle strong, joint supple, digestive system smooth, and your whole system in physical balance. Horseplay can cause injuries or accidents. Just say no to horseplay on the job. No running, no bullying, no chasing, pushing, goofing off, practical jokes. Remember, you need to respect and look out for your coworkers' safety. Most of all, do not forget to respect all heavy equipment at all times. Always be aware of the surrounding traffic at all times. Follow the safe behaviors for each assigned task that you talk about every day in your daily job plan meeting. Attend that daily job plan meeting and be to work on time. If you're in a vehicle or equipment, always wear your seatbelt. It's our policy, it's Florida law, and they do save lives. The Asphalt Group's continued success depends upon our ability to remain both productive and safe at the same time, day in and day out. We must always look out for ourselves and our coworkers and expect the unexpected. Through observance and encouragement of our safety policies, we assist in protecting the overall well-being of our employees, clients, subcontractors, communities, and the company. Our employees are our most valuable resource. The best equipment, vehicles, and tools are nothing without an employee to make it work. Remember to review and sign off on the orientation checklist. And once you get out to the field, make sure you are well rested each day and ready for work on time. Limit distractions while at work and stay focused. Do not use your cell phone during work hours. Look out for yourself and your coworkers at all times. And if you see something hazardous, say something. Don't wait. And welcome to the team.